Welcome to part two, the part where I'm still digging. So I've collected a load of rock this morning from Lindsay Clark's, a bulk bag of cropped York walling, lovely material. I use it a lot on ponds, and if you've seen any of my videos you probably would have seen lots and lots of jobs using that stone. I'm sort of in a position where I'm waiting for materials to turn up. The pond liner should arrive with me tomorrow. I've still got to go and source some sand and cement and other building materials. But whilst I've brought the rock over here, I wanted to trench in the cable and the pipe work, the conduit and the pipe work for the filtration system, which I've decided we're going to position well away from the pond and the pond border, up in a much bigger border over here. In terms of elevation and sort of head loss, which is something that you need to consider when you're pushing water over long distances, elevation is not really any greater, but there is a longer length here, and I would lose a certain amount of flow through friction loss. So that's something that I've had to calculate, and I've allowed for a slightly bigger pump as a result of that. But I think it keeps it nice and tidy. It means that maintenance for the filtration in the future is going to be much easier. We don't need to worry about running long hoses across to borders well away from the pond, or having dirty water from the filter running back into the pond. It can all be dealt with well away over here, discreetly. But back to trenching again. Thankfully, so far, the soil has not been too bad. Very few roots and quite easy to dig. Right, better crack on. Got some decent music playing here, look, you can have a listen. This is what gets me going. Right, that's the trench dug. Handy having the right tools. It didn't take too long. And now in this trench I'm laying a few lengths of pipe work. One from the pond pump to the filter, and then a return from the filter running back to what will be the feeder pool, the header pool, the supply of the streams. And then a third pipe, a little bit smaller, which is a conduit for cables. I think I'm going to mount all the electrics up here as well, so that when you're doing maintenance on the filter, if you want to switch the filter off, the pump or the UV, you can do so very closely to the unit, which is going to make it a lot simpler when you're doing cleans. And the lighting is going to be controlled separately via a timer close to the pool side. Despite appearances, sadly I'm not going to do a nice fishing trip. It's just a little bolt hole. The weather's not looking very good today. It's a quick and easy shelter for me to put up to hide my bags and lunchbox and electricals and bits and pieces. So over the next couple of days it's going to be time to start lining the pond. I've got the pond liner and the fleece with me. I'm just currently filling up one of my holding tanks, so I've got some water in preparation. I should have done that last week really. So in the meantime, whilst I'm waiting for that tank to fill, I've still got a lot of prep work to do in the excavation. I can remove all of the old pond linings, start trimming away all the roots, looking for sharp stones and objects, and get that ready for me to then just fleece and line. And also the trench that I was digging recently for the pipework and the conduits, I can start to pull cables through the conduit. I can get the filtration system positioned over in the border ready as well. So I've got a few jobs to get on with whilst that tank is filling up. I hope the weather holds out for me. This week it's looking a little bit mixed. For June weather, it really isn't very settled, so I hope it improves. Right, let's tackle the first job, which is getting these cables through the conduit. I've got two lengths of lead here, both of which reach from what will be the power supply. There's already some sockets and electrical boxes positioned by the pond, all the way to where the filtration system and a new pond switch box is going to be mounted over in the border on the fence. To identify the two separate cables, one of them I've marked with some red electrical tape at both ends, so I know one cable is going to be for the power supply and one cable is going to be for extending the pond pump to make sure it reaches the switch box. The UV, obviously, which is also going to get wired into the switch box, comes pre-wired on the filter with 5 meters of cable, and as that's positioned up there already, I don't need to worry about feeding that cable through this conduit. Now I've got my fish tape on my wire in position through the conduit already, and all I'm going to do is just tape on these 2 lengths of flex onto my wire and pull it through. That's the plan anyway. Rather than tape the 2 leads directly on like this, which will make quite a wide, quite a fat join, I prefer to sort of daisy chain on the cable. So I'll tape one on to the wire, and then I'll tape the second cable onto the wire slightly further back. So that means that we haven't got too wide a lump of anything being pulled through the conduit. I don't think I'd have any issues using an 1 1/4" 32mm pipe like this with just two cables. There's lots and lots of room, but I'd rather do this once than have to faff around pulling it back through and retaping it. So I'll do it the most sensible way. Now, although this is quite a straight run of conduit, it would be a lot easier doing this with 2 pairs of hands. If you can get one person sort of feeding and pushing through the cable as the other person is pulling at the other end, it makes the job a lot easier. Right, let me get that end and start pulling. This is coming through nice and easily. There we go. First cable, second cable, perfect. Right, I'll remove this tape. And then I've got a little bit of extra conduit I'd like to position that side so I can get my cables all the way to the sockets or the power supply in one length of conduit, one length of sheath. So we can tackle the filtration now. This is a big old box. Now, as always, I'm using a Waza kit, and again I'd like to reiterate, I'm not affiliated with a Waza. This job hasn't been sponsored by a Waza, but having spent many years in the trade, I have built up a relationship with lots of different companies. I know the various members of staff very well, and I like to use kit that I know is reliable, that's not going to cause me any headaches in the future. So my go-to manufacturer is always a Waza. It's great. So this is an Waza Filter Clear pressurised filter system. The original filtration unit on this pond was a Laguna pressurised system, albeit it was about half the height of this. This is running a 60-watt UV and a nice big stack of filter foams, more than man enough for a pond with this kind of volume. So it's really over-spec'd, which is going to minimise maintenance in the future and ensure that the pond stays nice and clear all year round. Now, being a pressurised unit, positioning is very flexible. It means that you can position the filter higher or lower than pond level, and it will maintain the pressure of the pump and to deliver that water where you want it. Obviously, if this is going to be positioned lower than pond level, it's important that you've got some slide valves and some isolating taps so that you can turn off water supply to and from the filter for maintenance, otherwise you'll end up draining the pond down. In this instance, the filter is positioned much higher than pond level, so we don't need to worry about that. So the unit itself is going to get buried up to the locking collar here. So it's a fair old hole to dig. We've got to have the right equipment to do so. And then we've got just a very basic inlet and outlet with the hoses obviously in position, and then a second outlet which is the backwash facility for cleaning out the filter. An integrated UVC up at the top. I like this newer generation of Filter Clear. They've made a few revisions and improvements. One of them here is that you can access the UV without having to remove the quart sleeve, which is very nice. You've got one small safety screw here, and then you pop open this blue lever. Again, with a Waza, anything blue is color coded, it means it does something. So a little slide lever here, and then you can pull out the UVC tube with everything still running, with water still running through the system, to do a basic bulb change. Now, obviously it's still worthwhile removing that quart sleeve annually to give it a good clean, but to remove the quart sleeve, again, I think is a lot simpler than the older generation 2 Filter Clears. So a really good unit. So it comes as standard with 5 meters of flex pre-wired to the UV. Obviously you only need a meter or two to get from here to the switch box. That can be extended if ever you need to. comes supplied with all the fittings and fixtures. And we are going to use, we've got options here to run 1.5" 38/40mm pipework or 2" 50mm pipework. There's not very many instances, I think, where you're going to use a 2" bore pipe on a pressurised filter. 2" hose for very, very large ponds. I wouldn't be recommending a filter like this for large ponds in the first place. So almost exclusively I'd always use 1.5". Having clear hose tails like this is nice. It means you can actually see water flowing through the system if you're not sure whether the unit is on and there's actually stuff being pumped through. A little visual window is quite useful. It's also useful when you're doing the backwash to use the second clear window hose tail, so that when you're pumping dirty water, without having to keep travelling back and forth the end of the hose to the filter, you can see once that water starts to run clear, you know that the filter has been bilged if it's mucky water, and you can put it back onto filter again. So again, a little visual window like that is quite useful. I've actually put that one on wrong. The outlet should be the clear window, and you should be using this O-ring or flat seal for the outlet, and it's got a little flap on here. When the water's flowing, that flap is moved, and again that's another visual indicator to show you that there is water actually running through the filter. So clear one for the outlet. On the filter it's very, very obviously marked. It's embossed on here with arrows, one facing that way for the outlet, one facing this way for the inlet. So it's pretty idiot proof. Really good quality fittings these as well. Nice sturdy plastics. Black one for the inlet with the plain black flat washer. Now for the discharge, you should always leave that closed off. This valve system here, water going in, water going out, when you want to clean you rotate this valve and that diverts water this way. This isn't designed to be completely watertight. If it was, there'd be a huge amount of resistance trying to rotate this. So as a consequence, there's quite often a little bit of weepage coming out of this pipe, and I do see people leaving lengths of hose permanently in position, ready to clean. In theory that's a nice idea, but there's a great risk there of potential for leaking and dropping or lowering the water level of your pond. So always keep that bit flanked off with the supplied end cap. Like so. So that's all ready. I don't need to worry about removing the filter media from any sort of packaging or plastic. It's all ready to go inside. I just need to dig a hole and stick this in the ground. Let me just offer it up, make sure it's okay. That's perfect. Doesn't want to be any deeper than this, because for future maintenance it's essential that you can get to this locking collar. I do see a lot of people that will almost completely bury these filters to try and hide them, and it makes cleaning in the future really awkward. So only up to that locking collar. I want to make sure that this is relatively level in the hole, and then I shall backfill it and secure it into place. It's actually turned out to be quite a hot sunny day, so I'm rather grateful for being in the shade. Welcome to the bushes. So I've just extended the trench here for the cable conduit so I can get the power right over to the fence, and we'll end up mounting the switch box on the fence support here. Now the trench here is not quite as deep as it was running under the grass, and also because it's a border, there's much greater risk of somebody coming into contact with the cable. So as an added precaution, running through the cable conduit, I'm also laying a little bit of electrical hazard warning tape in the excavation, and then I shall be covering the top of the pipe, the top of the conduit, with just a layer of bricks to add as an extra safety precaution. So for the control unit, for the filtration unit and the pump, I'm just using a very basic Blagden switch box. This thing is synonymous with ponds. If you've been in the trade or you're familiar with ponds over the years, everybody will have encountered one of these. It's about as basic as it gets for a switch box, which is perfect for this kind of thing. When I'm coming to do some maintenance, or when Gary, the owner of the pond, is coming to do some maintenance on the system, all you need is access to turn on and off the UV for replacement, on and off the pump to be able to do servicing on the filter. So, a very basic unit's fine. We don't need to have remote controls or timer functions or anything else. Now, these are nice and tidy units. Obviously, if ever you've got the cover off of any electrical device like this, make sure that it's isolated and everything is switched off first. Of course, this isn't live. I've not done any connections the other end yet. But inside here, we've got 3 simple switches, a power supply in, and then 3 devices that can be operated. We're going to have pond pump, UVC, and then we've got a spare. These are all independently fused, and they also include a couple of spare fuses in the unit, which is nice. And then the box itself has got 2 LEDs. One which glows green to show you that there's power to the unit and the device is on, and when you turn the unit off, that light turns red. Unit's off, but it's still illuminated to show you that there's power supply to the box. And if you isolate and turn off power supply to the box, all lights are extinguished. Supply to this is really simple. We've got one end of the cable wired directly into this unit, and the other end has just been wired up onto a standard 13 amp plug, and that's been plugged into an exterior socket. So essentially this is just an extension. Now, the unit itself has a little bracket which you can mount onto something, and then you can slide on and remove the switch box nice and easily afterwards. So my holding tank's about half full. Well, a bit more than half full actually now, which is good, but I don't think I'm going to get the pond liner put in today. I haven't actually started to do any of the prep work, trimming all the roots and bits and pieces. It's gone 2 o'clock already. By the time I've finished here, finished prepping the ground, it's not going to leave much time to get the lining in. So in the meantime, I'm just prepping some of my stonework in preparation for laying it later on in the week. Now I want to get a nice pile of some very thin pieces, which I'm going to use primarily as a foundation stone. The first course of stonework is going to go right up to the edge of the shelf that I've dug, and then the second course of stone, which will begin the walling, is going to sort of step back a little bit. And I want that first tier, that first course, to be a nice thin uniform level of stone. So I'm just going around selecting pieces of rock which have been guillotined. If they've been guillotined and they've got a sort of a cut at the back, it makes it much easier to split the stone. Using thicker pieces of stone initially means that I can halve it, or even sort of get into a thirds of stone, that kind of thickness. What I'm aiming to try and get is pieces of stone about 1 inch or so in gauge. Bit of eye protection. And using a nice broad chisel or bolster and a proper mallet. I'll just work my way along the rock face, give it a few cursory taps. Be careful if you're sitting like me. And already, oh there we go, that was an easy one. The stone itself was starting to split. You can see a nice crack on there, and then you just work your way along. Sandstone like this, York stone, which is built up in layers, tends to be quite easy to split. So that's perfect. Go. Wonderful. So that one rock has given me 3 pieces. Now these are all quite long, straight faces. If I was doing a nice, neat, straight line for a wall, that would be perfect. But obviously, most of this pond is created out of continual curves. And in a smaller pond like this, it's unlikely that long pieces of stone are going to create a nice curve. So I'll probably end up going around and splitting these into slightly smaller pieces, again of different gauges, different widths, and that will be perfect for my foundation layer. A beautiful afternoon today's turned out to be. So I'm doing some final prep work before I can start fleecing and lining the pond, and we're just going around to make sure that there are no protrusions, stones, roots, sharp objects, things that potentially might damage or compromise the pond liner. So I'm getting rid of all of the loose spoil and bits and pieces one last time in the excavation, and then I'm running my hands all the way around the inner faces, the shelving, the back inner face here behind the walling, and if I can feel any roots or anything sharp, I'll deal with it. And the best way to do this really is to run your hands over everything. You don't just want to visually spot the roots, you want to try and feel, because quite often there's bits and pieces that you're not really aware of, but running the back of your hand up and down the soil, you'll catch something and then you can give it a sniff and get rid of it. Because typically I'm right at that stage in the afternoon where, should I carry on and get the liner in and commit myself, or should I wait till tomorrow? I'm eager to get some water in this, especially as it's dry at the moment, but equally I know what it's like when you start doing things like this, and what you think is quite a simple job suddenly might end up taking an awful lot longer than you expect. And I don't want to be too late tonight. Well, in the end, it was a bit too late yesterday for me to start thinking about lining the pond. So a new day, I can tackle this exciting part of the project. So I'm just going to open up the pond liner, let it warm up a little bit in the sun before I start to use it, and it also gives me an opportunity to see how the liner's being rolled up. We've got a 4.27 by 6.10, and I want to know which way it's been rolled up, so that when I unroll that pond liner I know the longest and the widest aspects. You'd hope that it had been rolled up on the longest roll, but that's not always the case. And I'm using the 1mm, well, it was called a Firestone rubber, it's now called Pond Guard, but it's the same material. It's a very heavy duty, flexible rubber pond lining, which is durable and very puncture resistant, and it's definitely my lining of choice. So it has been rolled out along its length, so I'll know which way to drag this into the excavation. So if you're new to pond building, a protected pond fleece is very important to protect the main pond lining from sharp stones and roots and other foreign objects that might damage the pond liner. Now, because this is quite a small excavation and there's a lot of curves on here, and I'm using a very heavy duty thick 250 GSM pond fleece, I don't want to get too many creases in the fleece, because that's going to transfer to creases in the pond liner, which is going to make them look a lot worse. So rather than just sort of opening up long stretches of fleece and trying to fold it to shape the pond, I've actually cut out a base shape out of one piece of fleece for the base of the pond, and then I'm going to sort of hang down and drape down long cuts off the sides and let them hang down and just touch the bottom of the pond, and that's going to reduce creases. Right, now it's the time for the pond liner. Shoes off for this bit. I only want to really be walking on the pond lining at this stage with socks or bare feet, or my waders when I've checked the cleats to make sure there's no stones or anything caught in them. Looks like the Dragonfly is fully fledged. End of excitement. I've got to start doing some real work. This morning I'm going to get the pond drain down and start some actual building. So I've just been busy chopping a bit of rock and shaping it ready to lay, and I've got enough stone now that I want to knock up a mix of cement. So this is my standard kind of basic mix: 4:1, 2 parts soft or building sand, 2 parts sharp sand to 1 part cement. This is just a regular Portland cement mix. There's no additives that are going into this to make it waterproof. There's nothing I'm putting in this to make it pond or aquatic safe, which is a question I get asked an awful lot on the channel. It's just a regular cement, and yes, it will leach out lime into the pond initially, and there will be a certain amount of kind of corrosive chemicals, which means you won't be able to put fish or livestock immediately into the pond. But when I'm filling this pond up, or when I'm working with this pond with water in and letting it soak, the vast majority of that lime and sort of chemical content is leaching out into the water very rapidly. And after a full drain and clean and a jet wash, refilling the pond, letting it settle for a few weeks, that's sufficient to then start adding livestock. The first year or so, water parameters are always going to be a little bit more alkaline and a little bit harder than they will be in following years, because the cement will continue to slowly leach out products. Small partial water changes throughout the season might be beneficial, but it honestly isn't a problem. Always put a little bit of extra cement for luck, but you must always do that, otherwise it won't work out. I'm also using a little bit of plasticizer in my water mix, and that will help the mix to be more workable for longer, and it provides a little bit of winter frost protection as well. And for small quantities like this, rather than using the cement mixer, which is always a big job to clean afterwards, using a little paddle mixer like this and just mixing up quantities on demand is much quicker and much simpler. I only really use the cement mixer now if I'm doing very big jobs or knocking out really large quantities of mortar. I'm looking to make this mix an awful lot drier than you'd use for sort of typical bricklaying. I'm working in water. If the mix is too dry, I can always moisten it down very easily. So I'd much rather start with something that's too dry and make it wetter than have something which is too wet and then I can't really use it. Well, this is actually a little bit wetter than I would normally mix the first load. It's the perfect consistency to lay, but if the stone was wet or there was a lot of puddles on the pond liner, this actually would be a little bit too wet to work with. Thankfully it's a dry day, so that's a nice consistency for me to work with now. Here's the load of pre-cut stones that I'm going to lay as that first course, that kind of outer step. So we'll get those laid and then I can start building the wall in behind it. I need my liner offcuts. Obviously I'm not going to put this stone directly on top of the main pond lining. It needs a little bit of protection. So all the offcuts of liner I've pre-trimmed into little sections like this. It's going to make me, which I'm going to lay the stone on top of. Working on the pond like this with water in, it is a nuisance, but it's a necessary nuisance because it holds the pond liner in place and it means that nothing's going to slip or slide as I'm laying the stonework. Well, it's been a couple of days since I've got the camera out, and you can see I've made some decent progress on the stonework around the edging. It looks lovely. I'm pleased with how stone ties in really nicely with the very formal paving and tiling of the retaining wall here. I'm just starting to think about the cascade sections. Weather has been atrocious. For June, 12 degrees today, it's windy, too windy for me to get the gazebo up. And there's a lot of threat of showers. Right, I brought with me today a couple of nice flat stones that I think are going to be suitable spill stones for the final pour into the pond. This one in particular I've had in my garden for quite some time, saving it for such a job, but it's a little bit on the thick side for me. I think it was a bigger pond, I wouldn't have an issue with this thickness, but on a slightly smaller pond like this, it's a lovely big stone, but I think to try and keep it in scale, I'd like to just reduce the thickness slightly, and in the process I might be lucky enough to get a second nice flat piece of something that I can use in the cascade or the stream. It's a little bit dicey. There is the potential that if I bugger about trying to split this, I might end up damaging the stone entirely, but everybody loves a little bit of jeopardy, so I would like to give it a go. I reckon it'll go. There's about an inch lip all round here, which I think I'll be able to break off. I can do it in one big piece. That would be lovely. Wish me luck. Well, it wasn't the one big clean split in half that I was hoping for, but the most important thing is the main stone is usable. I haven't sacrificed it, so that's fantastic. I think a little bit more here to chip away, but otherwise I'm very pleased with that. That's going to be a lovely spill stone. So I'm progressing nicely with the walling here on the back of the pond. I've got to the stage now where I'm starting to sort of dry lay, just so I can start to map out where the spill stones are going to be for the cascades and sort of the heights that I'm going to set them at. Obviously there's a spill here, and there's going to be a second spill, I think, over this side. And I've got up to about this section here of the walling, which is mortared into place with a few dry bits out on top. And then all of this is just being plogged down dry, just so I can start to map out heights and positions of stonework, etc. And that's going to work nicely. So the next job is to dismantle all of this, to continue building, and when I get to the stage where I have to fit this spill stone, that's when the secondary cascade pond liner needs to come into play and overlap the main pond liner. Weather this week is looking fantastic, so one blip tomorrow, a little bit of drizzly weather forecast, otherwise everything's getting dry. Should be able to make really good progress, and I'd like to think that the stonework will be completed by the end of this week, and I should be on working the cascades. And a drink from one of my new mugs. If you fancy a Carpe Diem mug, check out my store and the merchandise on the bottom of the channel. So let's have a little bit of an update. It's been about a week since I got the camera out, and in that time I've finished off pretty much all the stonework around the pond. This morning I've just edged the last couple of pieces that will allow me to get the water level up to its maximum level, and I'm now starting to work on the cascades. So before I can do anything, I need to backfill this void that I've created by building up this retaining wall and get all the soil up to level, so that I can then start to dig out the kind of path for the streams and the cascades. I've got a couple of lovely spill stones just dry laid in position at the correct height, and once I've backfilled here I can lift the stones, I can build up a foundation at a nice angle to make sure that the new pond liner that overlaps the main pond liner is sitting at a sort of a a downward slope so that any water that flows between the stonework and the pond liner, rather than over the top of the stonework, is still going to flow into the pond and not pool up or collect behind the stone. It's a hot day, it's going to be a hot week this week. But by the end of this week, I'd like to think that most of this will be done. Now before I can backfill this void with soil, I need to make sure that there aren't any stones and sharp objects that have fallen down during this last week of work, and that I've got a nice layer or two of pond fleece coming right up behind the overlap of pond liner here. I've got a few extra bits of fleece that I've cut in preparation, and I shall just make sure that these are laid down underneath the pond liner. It's going to be lovely seeing the pond full. By tomorrow, once those last couple of stones have set, I'll be able to get the last few inches of water in, and that'll be the first time I've seen the pond properly full. Another hot day today, forecast to be, oh, I'm stuck. Hopefully you can see me in the shade and the contrast of this gazebo, because it's very bright out there and these GoPro cameras are not very good at picking up different lights. So I've made a good start on the cascades here. Yesterday I started to add some of the edging stonework, having fitted both spill stones a couple of days ago, and I'm slowly working my way up. I'd sort of dug out a rough impression on the floor of the direction that I wanted both cascades to go, but nothing too definitive, because it's the stone and it's the shape of the rock as I lay it which is going to start to dictate the position and the shape of the falls. And as I work my way back, I'm being very careful to check levels to make sure that every spill where the water pours over is on a slightly higher gradient than the lower level, to make sure that you've actually got water pouring, but also making sure that those spill stones are still lower than the surrounding ground level, so that when we've got the liner coming up behind it and around the edges, there's sufficient height to get edging stones to hold that liner in place, which aren't going to be proud of the ground around it, because that looks very unnatural. I emphasise here that when you're building a stream or a cascade, it wants to be dug out in the ground rather than sitting on top of it. That's what helps to keep it look more natural. So another day today of knocking up some cement, and there's some stonework. I'll try and get the camera out a bit more often today, because I've been a bit lax on that. I've been getting carried away and enthusiastic with this, and don't seem to find time to get any video.